Now to a controversial new theory that suggests there's an ongoing liberal bias in Hollywood. In a book entitled Primetime Propaganda, The True Hollywood Story of How the Left Took Over Your TV, conservative columnist and radio host Ben Shapiro has set out to prove, well, we're all being brainwashed. Yes, according to Mr. Shapiro, even Elmo is in on the plan to swing America to the left. I'm delighted to say that Ben joins us now live in the studio. Good afternoon.
Hey. Thanks so much for having me.
How is Hollywood liberal?
I mean, from top to bottom, from executives to creators to producers, I mean, these are all people who believe in one particular mindset. It's an echo chamber. If you've spent any time at all out in Hollywood, you know that most people tend to think alike politically. They tend to hang out with people who think like they do politically, and therefore their work tends to result in liberal propaganda.
How then do you explain Fox News, or the success of American Idol, or the success of the Jersey Shore? What have they got to do with left-leaning bias?
Well, I mean, Fox News is not particularly an entertainment-oriented. I mean, maybe you think it is, but it's not. It's a news channel in the same way that MSNBC is a news channel. My book is really not about the news. It's about entertainment-oriented programming. American Idol, to me, is actually a response to a lot of the liberal programming that's been in scripted television. The focus of primetime propaganda is really unscripted. I think the rise of reality television actually has a lot to do with the fact that the American people are interested in seeing things that aren't quite as one-sided. I mean, American Idol is actually a conservative show in my view.
Is 24?
No, of course 24 is a conservative show, or at least was until Janine Garofalo showed up. But 24 is one show out of literally hundreds, and I profile probably 100 separate shows in my book. It's always easy to pick one example of a conservative show. But the question is that when you're really talking about the vast majority of scripted television, is it liberal or is it conservative? You can always pick one Don Belisario, one Jerry Bruckheimer, but the vast majority of sitcoms, the vast majority of cable television, all of it is dominated by the left, and I have people on tape that I've been revealing, saying, yes, there's active discrimination in Hollywood, yes, we message our programming.
I've read most of your book, and I've got to this point where you even say the television industry made President Obama. I'm quoting you. You say, if the relationship between the Obama administration and the television industry is hot and heavy, there's a reason for that. The television industry made Obama.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe that President Obama is a media-made candidate. This is a man who didn't have a lot of background.
But hang on a second. He was a successful campaigner.
He was a great campaigner.
He won over the electorate with his arguments.
And with the help of the media. Absolutely.
But the media assisted every other political competitor in exactly the same way.
Did they really help Sarah Palin? I mean, it seems to me that Tina Fey was probably the single most damaging...
Sorry, sir, but Sarah Palin. She's got a whole network behind her. She's an employee of Fox News now.
Well, Sarah Palin was not an employee of Fox News at the time of the election, and Barack Obama was not an employee of any network at the time of the election either. But that doesn't mean that the media was not biased in favor of Barack Obama. They clearly were. I mean, the heads of most of the major networks were monetarily supporting President Obama during the election cycle. The Hollywood industry was largely supporting him, not only in terms of news programming, but in terms of actual scripted content. I mean, Oprah was out there campaigning. Oprah is probably the single most powerful woman in the history of American television, and she was out there actively campaigning for President Obama while saying she would not have Sarah Palin on the show because that would just be too partisan.
How are children's shows also biased?
Well, children's shows are biased in a slightly more subtle way. I think that they're really biased toward a kind of self-esteem ethos, the idea that, to paraphrase Barney, everyone is special, right? An unearned self-esteem, everyone in his or her own way, down to gender.
And you're saying that's as a result of a left-leaning bias. I thought that there are many child psychologists, regardless of political persuasion, who would say it's rather appropriate to affirm children.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of psychologists who do say that, but it definitely is a more left-leaning perspective on psychology, that self-esteem unearned is something that ought to be put upon children, especially if you look at Sesame Street. I mean, Sesame Street has been kind of the one that's drawn a lot of the fire here because people make it out like I'm trying to actually, baste Big Bird, but basically, but essentially, the Sesame Street. I interviewed one of the creators, a guy named Mike Dan, who's VP of Children's Television Network, and he actually said that the point of Sesame Street was to reach out to black and Hispanic children because, quote, there is no reading material in black households. Well, to me, I mean, that's just kind of soft bigotry of low expectations.
Ben Shapiro, I quite like Sesame Street. Thanks.